Hello again, YouTube. During October of this year, 2025, I visited Sammy Miller's museum. Not for the first time, and almost certainly not for the last time, for it is indeed exactly the sort of place that, even though you've been there once, twice, three times, whatever, there's always something new to see if you were to visit again. So I made my way down there, specifically, really, to look at the new Italian hall. I say new, it had actually opened some months prior, but this was my first opportunity to get down there. I documented that in a previous video, but obviously I wasn't going to go all the way to Sammy Miller's museum just to look at the Italian hall, so I went round the whole lot, as I do. I'm taking you with me. There isn't a tremendous amount of detail involved here. This is just me wandering around the museum. There's just too much of it to impart great knowledge and great information. This is more just an indication of what there is on display there, and there is an awful lot. It just gives you an idea of whether or not you think this is a worthwhile day out. For me, I think it is. So the day starts, or the trip round the museum starts, upstairs in some of the older stuff. This is a part of the exhibition which, from memory, doesn't seem to change that much during my numerous visits here. It's the older stuff typically. It's probably the things that are harder to find, more difficult to come by, probably fewer of them about so they don't get bequeathed to the museum. Nonetheless, this is an essential part of the experience, as it documents the early part of history, with some machines there being competition specific. And competition is very much the nature of the museum. Sammy Miller is, regardless of what you might think of him, a very, very accomplished sportsman. And this is borne out by the showing off that is a massive trophy cabinet showing just how successful he's been over the years. He's probably best known for motorcycle trials, but his expertise and his exploits covers just about every aspect of motorcycle sport. But anyway, that's enough from me for a moment. Put the kettle on, have a cup of tea, put your feet up, sit back and relax, and enjoy a trip round the Sammy Miller Museum. Having looked at the older and for the most part smaller stuff upstairs, it's time to move downstairs. There is an area here dedicated to Norton. Norton were one of the most, if not the most successful sporting motorcycle brands ever, up to a point. And this sort of reiterates the emphasis here of sporting machines, Sammy Miller being the sportsman. He has some association over the years with Norton and their racing, and that is displayed here. There are one or two really special bits of kit in here, and at least one of these is possibly the only one of its type in existence. Moving along through the more what you might call general exhibits, we see examples of later stuff. We're into the 1950s and 60s here, with the brands that probably everybody is familiar with, Triumph and BSA, etc. Again, a nice spread of examples, with the occasional oddball. One that immediately springs to mind is a prototype Scott. A wonderful thing, absolutely wonderful, and you won't see that anywhere else. Although Sammy Miller is probably best known for his trials exploits, he does have a very accomplished career in racing. And to that end, racing machines, particularly ones that are associated with him, are well represented in a hall dedicated to racing equipment. Again, as with other parts of the museum, there's some wonderful, special and somewhat rare, if not unique, examples of equipment in this hall. Since my first visit here, countless years ago, Vincent has become much better represented in terms of the number and the diversity of the models on display. There are now, it is a nice handful of Vincents here, including a rather special grey flash. Beautiful machine. I do have a soft spot for Vincents. I sometimes think to myself, maybe it's a V-twin thing, because I have a soft spot for Ducatis as well. But Vincent's for me, a sort of a late 40s, sort of 1950 Black Shadow, in my opinion, is the finest machine of any type ever produced. And this grey flash isn't far behind. once we've been round some of the newer acquisitions, new being a relative term, that is over the last, well, probably decade, and the ones that are, again, closely associated with Sammy himself in terms of design and build. He did have a tremendous amount of involvement in the development, design and building of trials bikes during his long and illustrious career. So once we get through those machines, or past those machines, and a very recent acquisition of something which he said he would never ever own, and that is a scooter, it's time to move on to the Italian hall. And it's the Italian hall which was the principal purpose of my visit here. So let's have a look round that. as ever, a trip to Sammy Miller's museum in the New Forest is a wonderful day out. I've had a very good time. I got to chat to some people who were involved in the ride-in, it being a Tuesday. There's lots of old and interesting stuff there that turns up on a Tuesday morning. I got to have a very nice lunch in the new, well, I say new, not that new now, but Sammy's Pit Stop, which replaced the terrible Bashley Manor tea rooms. And I've had time spent in the museum. The museum themselves recommend a minimum of 2 hours to get round the museum. I think I'd have to run round to do it in 2 hours. Most normal people would probably take 4, and I probably take about 6. But that's just me. But anyway, if you're in the New Forest, if you're in the south of England, if you're, that part of the world, you can do a lot worse than pop round to Sammy Miller's. And if you join the British Motorcycle Charitable Trust, you get a 50% discount. Right, that's enough of me. Bye for now.